Welcome to 27 Topics, the Candidate Series. With us at this time is Ron Arnold from Daviess County, Indiana, and he is District Representative 63, Indiana State Representative candidate. Welcome to 27 Topics.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, just turned 50 years old October 9th, married with 3 children, have been married for 27 years. Born and raised in Daviess County. The only time I was away from the community is when I was off to college. Graduated from Vincennes University in 1977, Kentucky Wesleyan in 1979. I am a graduate of the Institute for Organizational Management at Notre Dame, which is a U.S. Chamber of Commerce course, and also the Economic Development course for Ball State University. From the time I got out of college, involved in the family business and a number of small grocery stores and restaurants. To this day, my brother and myself own and operate Mason's Root Beer. And then my main job is I am the Executive Director for the Daviess County Economic Development Corporation. Got out of the grocery business in 1998, took a job as Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce, and about 3 years ago moved over to the Economic Development side, which means I mainly work with the manufacturing industrial sector.
The Economic Development Office, that's comparatively new, is it not?
It's been in operation since the early 90s. Daviess County made a decision that the communities that are really successful have 2 separate entities, one being a Chamber of Commerce and the other one a Development Corporation, and that's the direction they chose to take.
Why are you seeking this office?
Well, really, since 1998 when I took the job with the Chamber, I've had an occasion to spend time at the State House when they're in session. And to be quite honest, what I see up there and what's reported back here in the district are almost like night and day, 2 different things. I honestly feel that there are some from the old school up there that's been there a very long time that aren't there for the right reasons. And it's on both sides of the aisle the way I see it.
In your opinion, what is the most pressing issue that should be addressed in the next legislature?
It always comes down with me, and I'm a very simple person, but it comes down to jobs. What are we going to do to stop the erosion of the middle class? What we have is a situation to where the communities, especially in the rural areas, our young folks are leaving, and we have to provide as much support to our businesses so they can provide the jobs that our young kids need.
So, jobs is the thing.
In my mind, job supports everything. I mean, if you look at it and if you want to get technical, we have 3 basic sectors. We have the private sector, we have the nonprofit, and the government. And at the end of the day, the private sector, and it's the fruits and labors of the men and women working in the private sector that really fund the government and the nonprofit sector. So without a good, strong private sector, the other 2, although short term, may do some good. In the long run, they're going to falter.
Very good. Then we go into some comments on some other issues, all-day kindergarten.
I think all-day kindergarten in this day and age is a must. It's a situation where we have to give our kids a leg up. The dropout rate is where it's at, which is about 25-27%, depending on who you listen to. But the number one reason for dropouts in our high schools is because of boredom. And you'd have to think that the reason for that is they just don't get to the point where they're really encouraged and enthused to learn. And I think the more you can form that base at the bottom end, the better off you're going to be.
Then another issue to coincide with that is school funding. How would it and school funding, that's an issue with taxes all the time.
It certainly is. And the way we fund our schools, I think we have to look at that as a total package. To throw so much of the burden on the local taxpayer, and even though that's a small percentage of the school funding, it's still quite a burden for the taxpayer. So I think you have to look at that. But I think the first thing you need to do when it comes to education is how are we going to make our schools accountable? How do we prove that we are now getting the most bang for the buck? In the long run, I don't think anybody will deny that we need to put more funding in the school, but I don't think it needs to be in the same manner in which we've done it in years past. We have to find a way to be more effective and actually teach the kids what they're going to need 10, 20 years down the road.
So that brings us to I-STEP testing, possibly, to make schools responsible. How do you feel about I-STEP testing?
Well, the I-STEP as it is set up now, I think we might as well do away with it. I believe in testing, but it's a very expensive test, and it's done at a time to where you really can't pinpoint exactly where the problems were at in the education. If it's held in the spring right now, you're actually testing on what they've learned. By the time you get the results back, you're in different classes, different classroom settings, so you really can't say, well, this teacher was accountable for this or that, although we hold the administrators accountable. So to me, it's just much too expensive test. There's other ways, and I would be all in favor of testing in a time frame that would more reflect what the kids are actually doing now.
I know there is another test that's mentioned sometimes is a Northwest Education Test, NWEA.
Right, and you talk about the expense with that test and the setup. I like the basics of that test. I know there has been some discussions with some of the companies that because if we change from MyStep that they would even pick up the initial cost of getting on track and moving it to a fall testing, but I don't think all those details have been worked out yet. But I would certainly be in favor of looking at something like that.
Property tax relief.
It's a must. Property taxes are too high. They're not really based on ability to pay. But the trick is, what are you going to replace them with? Really, you're looking at three basic taxes that I think you can look at. And one's, of course, the property tax, the sales tax, and income tax. I think you're in a situation you would never be able to eliminate the property tax, but I think you can get them down to a level that would be acceptable. But then you're going to have to look at a graduated income tax, when some people will stand up and tell you that, well, we should shift this tax burden to the business. Anytime you do that, you're costing somebody jobs. And at the end of the day, that's counterproductive. So I think your options are looking at sales tax, looking at the graduated income tax, but again, growing your economic base to where the tax rates that you know I have can handle more.
You know, when the gas prices went up, there was talk about doing away with the gasoline sales tax. What is your opinion on that?
You know, I honestly think that was a gimmick, similar to when they had the sales tax holiday a few years ago. It was done for political purposes. When you're behind on your payments to the schools, which they have been and just now catching up, you have to look at all sources of revenue. But again, gasoline, a hot topic with a lot of people, but it's a gimmick, plain and simple. My opponent over the years has actually voted on several occasions to raise the gasoline tax. So to come out now and say we need to do away with it without a replacement in place, I think is strictly motivated by politics.
I-69 as a toll road.
I-69 is pretty simple in my way of thinking, is that we have set for a number of years being promised this highway. I can think of a governor during the election campaign in the late 80s, I believe, that told us he would build the Evansville to Indianapolis highway. And at the end of the day, all we've gotten is lip service. There is a plan to get the road built. And my opinion, no, I don't like toll roads any more than anybody else, but if it comes down to a toll road or no road, I think we better go with the tolls. And again, my opponent has come up with a plan that calls for tolling and owned by the state. And under that plan, what you will find is that it will cost more to build that road, and it will also take a longer period of time to do it. So I think that was motivated strictly by politics.
Cost of higher education. It's becoming too high and becoming out of reach for many.
That is a problem, and believe me, I know that, having had two kids go through college and both of them graduate. I spoke at an Indiana University business class, and I asked all the students in there, I said, you know, tell me, if you were running this as a business, how much waste is there, any facet of what goes on in that community? And there wasn't one student that told me that it was run efficiently. So I think what you need to do is you need to hold the administrator's feet to the fire and make sure that we're getting the most bang for the buck. And I think you will find that there's a lot of things being done at that level that could be done in a different way and more cost effective.
Prayer. The commandments are not commandments, but religious items on public property and prayer in school and prayer before the legislator, all these things have cropped up from time to time. What is your opinion?
It's plain and simple. Of course, I was born and raised Catholic, a member of St. Mary's Catholic Church, but the way I understand the Constitution, it's freedom of religion, not freedom from it. And anytime you step on those rights, well, the problem you're trying to solve, I think you're making a huge mistake, and I think it should be allowed.
Legislation on redistricting, I think it was brought up in the last legislature, of legislative districts to be done on an outside source from non-political firms. How do you feel about that?
I think it's a must. And again, we talk about things that have gone on over the years politically, and this was certainly one of them. The districts were drawn for political gain. And believe me, right now, just campaigning in 4 different counties, pieces of 4 different counties, it makes it tough. You spend more time on the road, less time knocking on doors, talking to people. But what you have is, if you're going to be an effective legislator, you need to work with the county commissioners, the county council, the town councils, town boards, and really get behind for one effort. And it would certainly be a lot easier to do it in 2 counties rather than 1. And I think the line should be drawn by county boundaries, or if you have to split a county, do it down the middle to get the most effective. But the way they've got it set up, they've really put themselves in a position to where it's hard to provide the services that I think a legislator needs to be providing.
Real quickly, state minimum wage.
Minimum wage, all the studies that I have read, again, it's one of those issues that you end up hurting the people that you're trying to help. In every state that it has raised, basically it leads to higher unemployment amongst the teens and entry-level workers. And there's not a community that I know around here, if the individual has, and maybe they need a little more training, but there's jobs available that's over that minimum wage. So again, I think that is really one of the political hot buttons, and the people that jump on board really don't understand the issue.
We have just approximately 2 minutes left. You have this 2 minutes to tell us anything you want to. Just tell our viewers.
Thank you. Again, I don't consider myself a political person. The reason I'm running is I see things that I feel need to be done to improve economic development for the rural areas. And it's a situation that there have been certain benefits over the years that legislators have given themselves that I think is out of bounds, overboard. We're talking about health care for ex-wives. We're talking about the retirement program where the state puts in $4 for every dollar they put in. That's not what a legislator should be all about. A legislator should do everything they can to provide opportunity, and I honestly feel get more local control back to the local communities to where they can make those decisions. If you're really of 1 or 2 camps right now in this day and age, the first camp is that everything at state level is out of sorts and there needs to be something done. I would tell you, if you believe that my opponent in this election has been up there 10 years, what has he done to alleviate that situation? If you're from the camp that thinks the state is in better financial shape than they have ever been, then I would tell you that I can continue on with that and I can carry on. And I don't agree with everything that's being done in Indianapolis. I think the rural communities for a long time have gotten the short end of the stick. I know they have passed special legislation to give certain areas special taxing privileges. In one case in point, when you look at Lawrenceburg, because the casino revenues have just given Greensburg $10 million to help attract the Honda plant. That's good for the state, but it works against us. So again, I am here strictly to improve the area, the economic climate of the area, and understanding that people have to take responsibility. And I thank you for your time.
Welcome to 27 Topics. Today we have with us a very special guest, State Representative, District 63, David Crooks. Welcome.
Thank you, Paul, for the opportunity.
Now let's just start off. Why don't you tell us a little bit about David Crooks?
Okay, I'm 42 years of age. I live in Washington. I operate a couple of radio stations in Washington. I have 2 children, Mackenzie and Jared, who are 15 and 11, and they attend Lagodi schools, and I'm in my 5th term as being the representative for the 63rd District.
You just answered the question. You've been in there for how many terms?
10 years total, 5
10 years
terms.
total, 5 terms. What, in your opinion, is the number one issue in the state?
Well, it's always jobs. I mean, even when the economy is doing well, jobs is always going to be a big issue for Hoosiers, because even when you have a job, you want a better job or a better paying job. So what we would like to see happen over the next few years is to continue to make Indiana attractive to business interests, so they'll want to come and locate their new manufacturing business or high-tech business or distribution warehouse. And we've made some changes the last 3 or 4 years that have helped spur on more business throughout the nation, and we're seeing some results from that already. But I think jobs is always your number one issue, Paul.
Are there any ideas that you have of creating jobs?
Well, I still think the deficit when it comes to our transportation situation in southwest Indiana of a north-south 4-lane highway, not just the Interstate 69 project, but a US 231 project that's been on the books for way too long. If we can finally remedy that deficit in our north-south transportation situation in our part of the state, it'll actually put us on a level playing field with the rest of the state. What people forget is that when you're talking to potential economic development, transportation is one of their highest considerations, besides, of course, a good work staff. So when you're not even offering them a 4-lane highway to get their products and goods on the road quickly and get it distributed throughout the Midwest or throughout the nation, it puts us behind, let's say, Columbus, Indiana, where you have seen development along I-65, for instance, all the way to Seymour and Louisville, and of course the other 2 corners of the state. We have to catch up with the rest of the state just to be on a level playing field.
All-day kindergarten, what's your opinion on that?
I think it's going to happen this next session. You're starting to see bipartisan support for it. My side of the aisle has advocated, of course, since Governor Frank O'Bannon proposed it a few years ago. I think we're now in a situation to where it's becoming less of a partisan issue, and we're seeing that it's an issue that is going to be good for kids in years to come. It really does give our kids a head start. So many teachers have told me that in some cases where they've got kids in their 1st grade class that they almost have to put aside to work with other students who haven't caught up with some who have had some type of full-day kindergarten exposure. So I think we need to do it, and I think we can make it happen this next year.
Do you see any type of property tax relief coming out?
I do. I think it has to get better, because this last budget that was passed, it basically allowed most local units of government to increase their property tax levy. It's the first time that the property tax replacement credit was maxed out at a certain level. In other words, the state could have done more to try to offset the increases that were needed, especially for our school funding. So it has to go the other direction this next year, and now that the economy is, of course, continuing to improve and our state financial situation is better, I think you'll see some relief, and I think you'll see an effort to try to give more local units of government what we call a toolbox. In other words, if there's other ways to raise funding without raising property taxes, there will be some alternative ways of raising those dollars. And even with the new dollars that are raised, I think there will be an insistence on making sure that at least half or more of those new dollars would go to property tax relief. So I think there are going to be some very serious proposals in that area next year.
Gasoline sales tax. Earlier this year there was comment about dropping the sales tax on gasoline.
Right.
What's your opinion?
Well, we're only one of a handful of states right now that charges sales tax on gasoline. We, of course, have the normal federal and state gas tax distribution that is charged on each gallon of gas. But when gasoline was around $3 or more this past summer, there were calls to try to find ways to save motorists some dollars, and I and others agreed that maybe it's time to repeal this thing, if not at least temporarily, but perhaps permanently. Now that gasoline prices have dropped down to the $2 level, there's been less focus on that issue, but I'm sure it'll be debated. There will be legislation presented, and it will either live or die on the merits of that proposal, and if we can actually afford that type of a cut.
I-step testing. Some schools just went through that. What's your opinion?
Well, it's necessary. I mean, you have to remember that for several years there's been a push to try to raise the accountability of our students, not only nationwide but in our state. So this is what we've come up with to try to gauge how well our students are doing. And I know it's still controversial for some. Some people think that you shouldn't have it in the fall and you should move it to spring, but I still think fall is the right place to put the I-step. It gives teachers more time later in the year to remediate those students who are having problems and to get a feel for what areas they need to concentrate their efforts. I check with my kids all the time. Every time they prepared recently for the I-step, we talked about it at length, tried to gauge how my 15 and 11-year-olds responded to it. And they're good students, but I think they understand that it's not as tough as what they thought it would be when they first took it a few years ago. So I kind of gauge their attitudes toward it to see what kids their age are thinking. But I do understand that there are some learning deficit children who have a bigger challenge with that type of testing, and we may have to make some adjustments for certain students to help them move through the process. But overall, I'm open-minded to improving it, but I hate to see us change every year just because there's some bumps in the road.
School funding.
Another area, that goes back to the property tax situation that we had, that we talked about earlier, Paul. This most recent budget that was passed, it was the first time in the 10 years that I've been in the House that we didn't find ways to give at least a 2% increase to local schools, even if their enrollment was flat or declining. Because the reality is, and whether it's Southeast or Southwest Du Bois, their utilities increase, whether they want it to or not, their insurance costs increase. So even if their enrollment is flat, they've got to find a way to pick up the additional cost of operating these schools. But in the effort this year, 2 years ago rather, to make every student the same, whether you're in Du Bois County or in Carmel, what's happened is some of these communities, like in Carmel or in Hamilton County, for instance, they're now getting caught up to make sure that what they call the ADM level is consistent throughout the state. And it's been a windfall for these communities that are well off. I find that unfortunate only because Carmel and Hamilton counties and some of those growing areas in and around Indianapolis, they have such a larger tax base to work off of than we do in the rural part of the state that I think some exceptions need to take place for our rural and struggling schools. So I'd like to see the formula adjusted next time around so there's not more reliance on increasing property taxes to make up for any shortfall.
I-69 as a toll road.
I-69, of course, is something that I've advocated for the 10 years that I've been in the House. I did not agree with the Major Moves legislation that was passed only because I believe the state should be in the business of building and operating our roads. With the legislation that did pass regarding I-69, to get the thing passed through the Senate, some very powerful senators had their part of the road exempted from tolls, which I find that to be just unbelievable. South of Martinsville, that's when the tolling would start under the current law. And then there was an exception made to the Perry Township language in southern Marion County to where the route just won't go through Perry Township without legislative approval. And what people need to remember is that it took several years to finally get federal approval for the environmental impact statement that we had and the route that was finally chosen. And whenever you deviate from that approved route, you could delay the project. So I, along with a colleague of mine, Representative Van Haften, recently proposed that next session we will work to exempt the Perry Township language. We will exempt the fact that there should be tolling for the entire roadway if we have to rely on tolls at all. There's also a part in the legislation that shouldn't have made it through the process that says if the governor or any of his staff, that when they negotiated the deal with the private company, that if any laws were broken, that they're somehow exempt from these laws being broken. And I just think that's unbelievable public policy. We'll try to figure out if there's a problem and why that was in there to begin with. But I think if we're going to toll it, let's let the state of Indiana toll it, operate the road through a bonding project, and then take those tolls off in 30 to 40 years once we pay back the bond, instead of allowing a private company to run it for 99 years at profit.
You know, the cost of higher education keeps going up, and it's high, and it looks like it's kind of becoming out of reach for many people.
We need to find ways to allow people to invest in themselves, whether it's high school students looking for a college assistance so they can actually improve their skills to be more attractive on the job market, but even young married couples that realize that, hey, they need to improve their skills as well. We need to find more loan opportunities, I believe, because I think it's a good investment in the future of our young people.
Prayer and the commandments are religious items on state property.
And
What's
also
your opinion?
The debate about the prayer lawsuit, so forth, in the House too. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
I think it's sad that we've gotten to this point to where we can't even say a prayer in the front of the chamber. We could debate this for several hours, but I do support the current efforts to allow us to bring the prayer back to the front of the chamber.
Briefly, legislation on redistricting of legislative districts by outside firms.
The reality of such a plan, not only is it not really constitutional without making a change to our Constitution, this is always going to be a political process, no matter how hard you try to make it nonpartisan, because depending on who the governor is at the time and who is selected to be on this panel, there's going to be politics played into this. So at this point, I think I'm just going to continue to work and be challenged by the constitutional charge of our job, and that's to continue to draw the districts every 10 years as it's been designed since 1816.
A real quick comment on minimum wage.
I voted against it last time only because I did not want to see the state minimum wage above the federal minimum wage. I'd like to see the feds take the lead on that first.
And now, Dave, we have 2 minutes left for you to tell the viewers why you should be elected.
Well, thank you again, Paul, and I appreciate everyone at Channel 27 allowing me this opportunity to talk to the voters before this very important election coming up this year. I realize that there are a lot of negative talk about people in Congress and even people at the state level this year because of all the scandals and all the things that are being discussed on your television each and every night. But one thing I want them to be assured when it comes to State Representative Dave Crooks, I'm someone who will listen. My phone rings 7 days a week, whether it's at my business or at my home. People who have questions or problems when they're dealing with a state agency, and sometimes it's not even state related, but they don't even know who to call, so they'll call me to try to get direction, and I do my best to always help. And I pledge to the viewers tonight that if you'll send me back to the State House, my door and my phone is always open. You can call me and I'll do my best to help you with not only your personal problem that might deal with state government, but more importantly, I think as we're debating these public policy issues that will affect Hoosiers for not just the next few years, but legislation like we've witnessed this past legislative session that's setting policy for the next 75 to 99 years, that I'm going to represent the masses and to make sure that people in Indiana who have ideas on how we can make our state better, their voices will be heard. So I would truly appreciate your vote. If you would like more information, you can call me at 812-257-1150, or you can go to my webpage at www.davecrooks.com, and I would appreciate your vote and support.